For the last day of 2017, you found the Georgia Gang. Topping our agenda today, Her Honor, the new mayor of Atlanta, will be sworn in this week. It's an election year, and that will dictate what happens at the state capitol. And after 30 years on the broadcast, one of us will be gone. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia Gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Good morning, good day, Happy New Year, and go Dogs. I guess that's what we have to say. And before we begin this last broadcast of the year, it fits with some of the things we're going to talk about. We are the epicenter of college football. We're the epicenter of the universe of college football. We have the Dogs on the road in the Rose Bowl, of course. And I know, Phil, you've blocked out your day tomorrow.
That's right.
But we've got the Peach Bowl. We've got the national championship game coming to Atlanta in about 8 days. We sure hope that Georgia is among it. It's an amazing thing. The College Football Hall of Fame, the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium, historic Bobby Dodd Stadium. This is the college football epicenter, and I'm real happy to be part of it. So let's turn our attention to the news, and we'll get to some of that when we talk about Kasim Reed. But first, Alexis, Keisha Lance Bottoms will be inaugurated Tuesday afternoon as the 60th mayor of Atlanta. And it's at Morehouse College at the Martin Luther King Chapel. Is it a religious service?
I don't think it's a religious service, but they wanted to have it in a place where it could accommodate a large number of people. And now that we don't have the Civic Center anymore, you know, this is a good place to do it. It's near downtown, and I think it's going to be a wonderful, beautiful ceremony.
And do any of you have any idea what Keisha Lance Bottoms might say in her inaugural? Big plans? I mean, I say that because I don't know how you could think bigger than Atlanta's been thinking for the last several years.
Well, I'm sure that she's going to talk about continuing the progress that I'm sure we're going to be talking about on the show as we look back on 2017. And I would hope there'd be a unifying theme, and I would hope there'd be a commitment to transparency and openness. You know,
thank you, you snuck that in, didn't you?
Did you like that very subtly?
I did like that. That was well done. So now let's turn to the man who's dominated Atlanta for the last 8 years, Kasim Reed. I noticed at the end of the week, he dedicated a new park. It's the West Side Park at Bellwood Quarry. It will be Atlanta's largest park. He announced the plans for it. It's going to be a huge reservoir. It will contain a 30-day water supply for the city of Atlanta, something we've been urging the governor to do more of.
Reservoirs.
So here's Keisha Lance Bottoms, in a sense, again, overshadowed at the 11th hour by Kasim Reed.
You know, he has said all along that he was going to work to the very last day, and you see him doing that in this and in every other way. And to her credit, she's given him the space to do that. She went home for the holidays to put the elf on the shelf, and that's been her focus, and has allowed him to finish up his term. But he insisted on going out this way, working every single day the last 8 years, and that's what he's done. And hats off to him.
Well, symbolically, that new park, the West Side Park, is part of the Beltline. And symbolically, that was a brilliant way for Kasim Reed to go out. Because the Beltline, and Jeff, I'm going to tip my hat to you. You know, I don't think the same way you do on the Beltline. But it is a crowning achievement of his term as mayor. It's changed the demographics of the city.
It has.
It has changed the in-town Atlanta ambiance completely.
Yes.
It's a big wide sidewalk. It's a glorified sidewalk. It's not a transportation thing as we were sold. But I would say that's his biggest, most visible accomplishment. And let's kind of assess where he's been for 8 years. Alexis, tell me what you think he will be remembered for the best.
Well, I do think that the Beltline, the transformation of the city, and also so many things really, reforming the pension system, which was a big threat to the city budget and city pension receivers. That was a big deal, but he tackled right away when he came in. The other thing would be the reopening of all the recreation centers around the city, because he was determined to do something for young people, to make sure that they have some constructive activity to do after school every day, and he opened them all back up. So he's really done a lot of really good concrete things to serve the city.
And he did it in the teeth of Obama's recession, which was difficult. And as Jeff, as you pointed out, he did it without property tax increases. Now, I've been somewhat skeptical of the city's bottom line, but as we sit here today, on the last day of the year, there's nothing really suspect. The city is flush, and the budget is balanced, and there are no property tax increases.
Went in, no property tax increase, and during some very difficult years of the Bush recession, but went in with about $7 million surplus. Came out with a $200 million surplus.
Thank you.
And it's just it's a phenomenal achievement, I think, for any mayor. In terms of the standout accomplishment, it's got to be pension reform, and he did it maybe 7, 8 years ago. So a lot of people forget that,
That's
you know.
right.
And all we see now are the building cranes everywhere in this city, just growing by leaps and bounds. But were it not for doing the basics, the fundamentals, like pension reform, making sure that we did not have these massive liabilities on the books, I don't think we'd be looking at $200 million in the bank right now.
Well, I would argue, and I'm going to go to you, Phil, in just a minute, but I would argue that the other thing that, among the other things he did, you talk about these thousands of jobs, new headquarters, corporate headquarters coming in. A lot of that was because, I don't know if Kasim Reed thought of it, but he leveraged Georgia Tech and its massive capabilities, turning Midtown into a corporate relocation center. That's impressive in its own right.
Well, it is, and I think some of the points that you've all made are very valid. And yes, pension reform back 7 years ago was a good achievement. And I think politically, the alliance that Mayor Reed formed with Governor Nathan Deal was a good one. And we are, for the 5th year in a row, the best state in which to do business in, which is very impressive. AAA bond rating, the governor's economic team deserves a lot of credit, and that alliance with Mayor Reed
never sniped.
That's right. I will
Savannah
say the dark side, however, of the Reed administration was started last February when we had the federal investigation start into the bribery, contracting, corruption scandal that's still ongoing, and we're still going to have some bad news.
And he's
in the
not
new
tied
year.
to it.
No, but unfortunately his chief procurement officer was, who's now sitting in jail for taking bribes.
Yeah, now we left out a couple of things.
What's-
It's interesting because we started with football, and I would argue that the achievement for which he might be most remembered won't be the Beltline, because it's just a wide sidewalk.
No, but it's
right?
more than that.
How about Mercedes-Benz Stadium, part of that partnership with the governor and the state?
Well, and Arthur Blank, of course, deserves a lot of credit.
And the West Side development.
I think we all
Right.
agreed that it was a good deal here on the panel for Mercedes-Benz. And if you want to look back on other achievements, don't forget the Battery over in Cobb County, and the Braves relocated. Kasim Reed lost the Braves, but it was Cobb County's benefit. And I think we could go down the list of many achievements
and
like
you
this.
Also, you left out mentioning the Savannah port that Kasim Reed helped the governor with
point.
getting
That's right.
federal
Very good
support
point.
for
You
that.
You know, I think I read in the paper the other day that Andy Young said that this was one of the most effective mayors that he'd ever seen.
I missed that, but I agree with it.
And I would have to agree with that. I mean, you know, at least in the 30, 40 years that I've been in this town, it's hard to say that you can look at another mayor with 2 terms in office with this list of
All right,
accomplishments.
and real quickly, so the downside to Kasim Reed, and we've been very
Wait,
fulsome in
but
our
there's
praise.
one more, and
What's that?
that's the annexation of Emory University
Yes, you're right,
into
and the
city.
CDC, you're
And the
right,
CDC.
absolutely. The downside would be the corruption probe, which isn't sticking to him yet, or we hope it doesn't. And the other would be his temper. He got mad all the time.
He's a little prickly, as they say.
Well, he's made needless enemies, sad to say, all across the political spectrum, and he's had a rocky relationship with the media, including folks on this panel. And you just have to buck it up sometimes, and he hadn't learned that lesson very well.
Where does he go next, quickly?
I think that he probably goes to private practice for a little while and does some other things. But I've heard all kinds of rumblings that, you know, that there may be a role for him as a transportation czar in the metro area and things like that. But, you know, I mean, he's got a young family, and I think that he would probably want to focus on that. It's a huge sacrifice to be mayor of the city of Atlanta financially and otherwise.
And
for
ultimately,
8
he might run
years.
for Congress.
Yeah.
He's been talked about statewide. I don't think that's feasible in the near future. All right, we got to get out. I don't think Kasim Reed's going to complain about you or about me or anybody after that set of encomia, right?
It's a love fest.
Yeah. Well, if you just step back, forget his temper, look at the record. It is astounding.
Forget corruption. Yeah.
It isn't Baltimore, it isn't Chicago, it's Atlanta, and it's good.
That's
and
right.
I think we owe Kasim Reed that. When we come back, we'll talk about, yes, it's another election here, which makes us tick. We'll talk about that and its impact on the General Assembly coming up.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
You know, we commented that Atlanta is the epicenter of the college football world. So much so, Phil, that the time-honored arrival date of the Georgia General Assembly is being pushed around by a day. All kinds of things moved just because the national championship college football game is being played in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium a week from Monday, I think.
Well, January 8th is Monday, and they still have to convene on that January 8th.
But they're not going to really do any business.
They're going to go
Some
to the football
can't get hotel rooms, right?
Right, that's right.
And so everything's backed up. Eggs and Issues breakfast,
That'll
which
be
you always
Wednesday.
attend, will be
That'll
on
be-
Wednesday instead of Tuesday.
That's right.
So we can't let lose sight of that. Football rules.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if
More
people
like
have not been to
business.
the College Football Hall of Fame in downtown Atlanta, that is a real asset and a gem, and I would urge folks to go by and take a look at that.
It truly is. All right, we go into the General Assembly in an election year, and that always colors things, but it's especially striking this year because so many seats are open. So we have major candidates for governor who are players in the General Assembly, for insurance commissioner, for lieutenant governor. We have two Democrats in the state house vying for the Democratic nomination for governor. We have the lieutenant governor, Casey Cagle, who is the most, I guess you'd say, the best known of the Republican gubernatorial candidates. Common sense says they won't get much done. What do you think?
I disagree with you. I think that there's a lot that has to be done that both parties need to get done in order to get reelected, and that's the main purpose of every politician right now is reelection, right? And so I'm sure we're going to go down a laundry list of what's going on. I can start off.
You did a good one.
Well, I can start off. We've talked about the last few weeks here on the show transportation, and I think you're going to see some discussion on transit. And
well, there have been two study committees, and they're pointing towards state money going toward transit.
There have been, and that would be a first. And of course, the Speaker of the House particularly has talked about rural issues, and there's a laundry list of what could happen there. We talked about, I remember last week, paying people to
go live in Hayhira.
To go live in Hayhira, Georgia. Jeff was thinking of that, but anyhow, tax credits, a broadband in rural Georgia.
In Jeff's world, that $3,000 bonus.
That doesn't cut it.
That's just a tip. It's not going to work.
Right. So rural Georgia, and of course you've got.
I don't understand that at all.
I read that the budget is $25 billion now.
I heard it was 22, but I remember the days
They're
when
talking about
it was news if it was right, exactly right, or a billion.
I know
a $1 billion budget was news.
I know it.
I know it's 22, 25.
Well, I remember when Zell Miller destroyed a primary opponent by asking her a simple question: "What's the state budget? What's the total?"
Right.
And she didn't know.
Right.
And that is the one thing that the legislature does have to do is they have to do a budget, and of course it's a balanced budget.
That's right.
Well, since you accused me of not having common sense, I'm teasing. I meant there wouldn't be much controversial, is what I meant to say there.
I disagree with you
so
on
in
that,
other words,
too.
I don't think they're going to take up religious freedom again unless it intervenes in the adoption bill, the rewrite of the adoption laws that is a priority in the State House and of Speaker Ralston.
Well,
So
the adoption bill always gets wrapped around pro-life issues, and that's always very controversial.
And
They're gonna
homosexual issues.
That's right, and they're going to the adoption issues. That's right, and then they're going to talk about tweaking the campus carry bill, so maybe we can extend it to other areas on campus. So, Dick, there is going to be some controversy, and of course, both parties always have to have some red meat issues to fire up their base. We know that. We talk about that all the time. So there will be, and you know, that last 39th and 40th day as we get into late March, that's always controversial, where you have the House and the Senate, even though it's controlled by Republicans. We saw last year pet bills were killed by either side at the last minute.
Yep.
For example, a flatter tax for Georgia. I was very upset. A lot of folks were upset. That died. School choice died. I hope those two issues come back again that can be passed.
Well, I think the Senate in particular would like to lower the state income tax from 6% to about 4%. Don't know if it's going to happen. Playing off something you mentioned, Jeff, about a transit czar, I look for a consolidation of state transit agencies because of these two study groups.
We've seen that before, right?
Moving MARTA and Greta into further
sort of an
alignment.
umbrella under some sort of authority, state authority.
Because we're not going to be building heavy rail. We've got to, as we said last week, we've got to aim at things like bus rapid transit, and we'll see what the General Assembly does with that.
Absolutely.
But
also, with the
sentiment
state
has
funding
changed.
at stake too, they're going to want to have some more control over it.
By the way,
sentiment has changed, and that's the most important thing. The sentiment there has
I think so, and I think I said this last year. Look for the fantasy sports to be taxed again. That bill will be coming back.
But nobody's mentioned gambling. I mean, it's got to come back.
Casino gambling will come
you
back.
just mentioned it.
But in an election year, it won't happen.
Well, yes and no. You can still. You have to set.
Not while Governor Deal's in office.
Well, you have to set the date for the referendum, the statewide
and that's all you got to do. Right? Just kick it to citizens to vote on, right?
You can kick it to when
absolves
Nathan
legislators
Deal's
of
not
having
governor.
Well, yeah, that's
next
true.
year.
I'm saying right here, right now, no casino gambling comes anywhere near it because of this election year and because Nathan Deal's the governor. All right, when we get out, we'll regroup and we'll tell you what we're going to talk about. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
I want to stay with the General Assembly just a little bit longer. I want to bring up another topic that I think might occur, and Phil, you've touched on it with me. Is it possible there could be a study commission to look at converting the Atlanta airport to a state authority?
Well, the answer could be yes. I spoke recently with State Representative John Carson over in Marietta, and he's interested in that, and I understand State Senator Burt Jones is interested. You know, that idea, Dick, was first floated, you all may remember this, by then Congressman Johnny Isakson back in 2001. He called for a state-run airport authority. You know, we're one of the last major cities in America.
That with Mike Bowers.
Well, Mike Bowers did that.
Mike Bowers running for governor.
That's right.
It's been around a long time.
It's been around a long time, and we're the last major city in the United States that doesn't have an airport authority. And I think it's a buffer. We talked about corruption and bribery. I think it's a buffer, somewhat. It's not perfect, but a buffer. You don't want the city to be having procurement, especially with the history we've had here.
But even more than that, the airport is not really in Atlanta. It's in Clayton County, and it's in College Park. And they're already having trouble deciding how to divide up all the tax revenues.
Oh, there's no question about it.
So a state authority might be the way to go.
Well, I don't know. I don't agree that a state authority is the right way to go. But we do have a serious issue with what to do about statutorily designated taxes in Clayton County, right? That the FAA is saying now need to go to Clayton County. Now need to go to Hartsfield, when in fact it's Clayton County that has the right to do a e-splosh for students there, and those funds should stay in the schools and shouldn't have to go to Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. And that's what the FAA is now saying should happen, and it's wrong.
Let me turn a hard corner here. This is difficult to do because we've been on this station for years. Amanda Davis died this week. She was the longtime Good Day host and then anchor here at Fox 5, later went to WGCL, and she died at 62 of a stroke. She worked here at the station in this very studio.
26 years she was here.
How much?
26
26
years.
I was just going to say 26 years. That's right. And I remember her, and I think I'll always remember her most for the Wednesday's Child segment on adoption and foster homes, a subject that's dear to me. And gosh, 62, and she had a stroke at the airport. What can we say? She was one of us, and so we mourn her loss, huh?
Absolutely. She was one of the fixtures here in Atlanta, particularly among African American women, and who were the lead anchors bringing us the news for more than 20 years, with Monica Kaufman, now Monica Pearson, and Brenda Wood. They were, you know, made a terrific...
They were pioneers.
They were pioneers and terrific
and royalty
role models.
in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just a terrific lady. I mean, she was very accessible. She was very friendly.
Cut the market out for white anchor women.
She just a terrific lady, and at such a young age.
Yes.
You know, to leave here, it was just devastating because first you got a text that said she'd had a massive stroke, and within hours she was gone.
I want to we've got a couple of minutes left here in this segment. I think we must mention tax reform and the tax cuts passed by the Trump administration. It's a monumental accomplishment. It hasn't happened since the Reagan administration. The left doesn't like it for reasons I can't figure out. Something that creates jobs and puts more money in people's pockets. But I think it's going to change the whole trajectory of the Trump administration. I'm sure you'd agree with me, wouldn't you, Phil?
Well, I would. It goes back in political history to 1962 when Democrat President John F. Kennedy had a very similar tax cut, and we had an economic boom. You're right, Ronald Reagan did the same thing in 1982. I think we're going to see the same thing, and you're seeing...
The only difference is those were bipartisan and this one isn't.
Right, but you know, you're seeing some Democrats now in the last couple of days grudgingly say, even Bernie Sanders is saying, gee, maybe we should have extended the middle class tax cut rather than have it temporary. Well, wait a minute. I thought they said there was no middle class tax cut.
That's a good point. I
think the thing that's troubling is the unknown about some of the impact of what's going to happen with the elimination of some of the deductions that people were counting on. And I think that's what's got people who maybe were in favor of it.
We now have stability with the tax code. That tax code, what, thousands of pages has been cut and simplified. Is it perfect? No, but I think it's better.
We have the greatest income inequality in America that we have had in decades, and I think that this tax bill is going to make it far worse. It's also going to add considerably to the deficit and to the debt that this country just keeps passing on to generation after generation.
They said that with Kennedy and Reagan,
unwilling,
didn't they, Dick?
Yeah.
Because we're unwilling. Because we're unwilling to
success.
We're unwilling to pay our own way. We just can't. We don't want to pay our own way. And it's so easy for those guys who get elected for 2 years to do that.
So because I'm the host, I get to have the last word, and I've been trying to say this for the last 3 weeks. Black unemployment in the United States of America is at a 17-year low. Everybody is prospering in the current economic surge. Everybody is. And you didn't see that under Barack Obama. Today, black unemployment is at a 17-year low.
Barack Obama created the conditions for it.
Exactly.
It certainly didn't happen in the last 10 months of Donald Trump.
We got to get out. I don't want to turn this into a game show, but in just a few minutes, one of these chairs will be empty. Stay with us.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we have a very short and snappy winners and losers segment. The winner at his own choice is Jeff Dickerson. The losers are the rest of us because Jeff is leaving us.
Right, and
after 30 years.
30 years on Sunday News Conference first in the Georgia Gang.
That's right.
And so I have winners.
And so our viewers know you and I have been friends for 40 years.
For 40 years.
When you were hired by Jim Minner to be a young reporter in the Fulton County Courthouse.
And you came to me, we were editorial writers at the Journal, and you said, I want you to do this show, Sunday News Conference. It was in 1987. And I said, oh boy, that'll last 6 months. And here it is, 30 years later, and we're still sitting here. And I think that 30 years is a long time. But I have winners as winners and losers. I think all of you are winners. I think that our viewers are winners. I think that our former panelists are winners. I'd like to note specifically Bill Shipp.
Yep.
My good friend Rick Allen and my very good friend Tom Houck. Those were the really heady days of Sunday News Conference and the Georgia Gang. And we've had a lot of fun. And, you know, but the real viewers are folks who've stuck with this program.
Leaving me as the only original. Thanks, Jeff.
Whether this is the first time you've seen the program or you've been watching it for years, they're all winners. So the viewers are winners.
But I just want to say personally, I think you're going to be missed. You've always been a man of reason, a man of substantive thought on issues, and I wish you'd change your mind, but you won't, I'm told. And I'm asking, and I asked you last week, I'm going to ask you again, will you come back as circumstances warrant and as you're needed, as your expertise is needed on a fill-in basis.
If we're
Would you do
desperate
that?
for a liberal voice.
My intent.
He used to be a conservative voice, by the way. But that's
My
another
intent is to burn all of my neckties.
Oh, no.
So you'd have to change. You'd have to change the dress code.
You sure?
You can wear a turtleneck. You can wear a turtleneck.
I have to say, too, and we all know this, and we often fight like cats and dogs over these policy issues here on the show, but many people are surprised that we're friends and we
We're
get
all close
together
friends.
every now and then. So
Well, gotta get out.
good luck to Jeff.
I'm going to miss your brilliance and his eidetic memory. I have seen him sit in the car, read the paper, and then come in and just report.
He's going to be replaced by a good man, Theron Johnson, whom our viewers are familiar with, and who is, like Jeff, a good thinker and a good analyst. And so that's it. Farewell, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah, you
And
will be
the rest
missed
of
for
us
sure.
will see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.